So me, I'm the type of person that has to start a series from the very beginning. I cannot play a game from the middle of it or from the latest installment. I have to see what the original games were like before I get to the latest installment. So recently, well, I say recently, maybe like a few days ago, I was all like, why don't I start playing Metal Gear? Metal Gear is a series that I've heard about specifically when I first started watching video game playthroughs on YouTube, and this would have been around 2010. I used to watch this one guy. He was a really big fan of Metal Gear. I was debating if I should say his name, Darkside Phil. Back when he was actually known as Darkside Phil. This was before DSP Gaming. This was before he had his DSP Gaming channel. It might have been 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And honestly, it was an instant no for me, dog. I mean, first of all, I love video games, but it's all like, what? This is a video game where I have to hide from people and not get caught? Bro, I do that shit in real life. Give me a gun so I can shoot some niggas. Like, I'm not trying to stealth around in a video game. Like, I'm not trying to hide away from people in a video game. That's just called reality. But, I'm just trying out different things. And I was all like, I've heard about this Metal Gear thing for like 13, 14 years at this point. Let's give it a try. So for the past like 3 days or so, I've been looking at a walkthrough of somebody playing through the first two Metal Gear games, the ones on the MSX. Because I should also probably preference that I have not done any research on Metal Gear at all. I don't know anything about the series. This is just things that I've heard over the years, and it might be unfactual. This is me just talking about my thoughts about Metal Gear without them probably even being factual. It's just me kind of rambling on for however long this video may be, if you don't mind. So apparently there's like two different versions of Metal Gear, right? There is the original ones made by Kojima on the MSX, which was a console it was like a computer console during the NES generation, because the American version of Metal Gear, right, was on the NES, but that had nothing to do with Kojima's Metal Gear, apparently. I'm just like, what's the point of that? Was the MSX not an American console, or was it not popular? I guess the NES was the most popular console in America, right? But it's like, if you already have the MSX original Metal Gear, why not just translate it or port it over to the NES? But they just created a whole different game. I didn't even watch the NES version because honestly, I don't know when the first Metal Gear came out. The second one, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, came out in 1990. So I assume the original game came out in like 1980 something. It might have been a year actually. So maybe like 1989, 1988. Yeah, those older games, honestly, those are not for me. I wish I said this in my previous video talking about The Little Mermaid. This is going to be so weird for people out of context if you don't know this channel. But I was talking about how older games expire very quickly. And I wish I had gotten into Metal Gear before I recorded that video, because if I had showed the films of 1980 versus the games of 1980, my point of that video would have came across so much better. Because one of the things that older video games have an issue with isn't graphics. That wasn't what I was trying to convey in that older video. I was talking about controls and overall feel of the game. One thing that Kojima seemingly likes to do is cinematography. He seems like a very big movie guy. And there was a lot of scenes in the first two Metal Gear games. I was all like, oh, this is actually really cool concepts, but unfortunately for the hardware that you're trying to convey these scenes it's very limited. And that's what I meant when I was saying that video games expire way quicker than film. A game like Final Fantasy VII, I played that, well, I shouldn't say I played that, I originally played it when I was 15, but I didn't finish it until my first year of college, and my first year of college was 2020. Playing that game, a PlayStation 1 game, there were lots of scenes and lots of movements that were muddled by the PlayStation 1 blocky graphics. So there were lots of scenes where I couldn't tell, was Cloud supposed to be sad? Was he supposed to be angry? Was he supposed to be this, that, and the third? Was Sephiroth supposed to be threatening in this scene? I couldn't tell because the nature of the graphics during that time were very limited in the emotions that they could convey. And that's the same thing that I felt was happening in Metal Gear. But even with that said, the things that the developers did implement into the game, it was good for what it was worth. I mean, like, bro, have you seen games from the 1980s? Holy shit, I think games, like, I don't know what games came out in the 80s. I would assume, like, the Super Mario games came out in the Like, imagine trying to make a cinematic game out of graphics from, like, games such as Super Mario, Donkey Kong, or E.T. That shit is hard, mate. And for the things that were going on in Metal Gear, that shit was crazy that he could get that off. Or all the developers could get that off during that time. So again, I've heard about Metal Gear for over a decade at this point, but I didn't know anything about the series. One thing that it was just like kind of weird. I shouldn't say weird, but it was kind of interesting seeing the little dynamics, the little quirks of the series that I've seen memed on or talked about for such a long time being showcased in even such as the first game. One thing was the comm calls. I was all like, I think. Because, again, I don't know anything about the Solid series. The only Metal Gear games that I've seen gameplay of is the original Metal Gear games. First of all, hold on. Metal Gear is a fucking, weapon? Like, bro, I don't know what I thought Metal Gear was, but I didn't know it was a actual tangible thing in the series. Like, it was a weapons thingamabob. I don't know. I don't even know what it was, mate. It was some sort of like giant machinery thing that Snake had to destroy in every single game up to this point. And then Big Boss in Solid Snake. Those were so confusing characters for me. I thought they were the same person, honestly, for the longest time. I thought, from my understanding, what I thought was going on was that Snake was the younger version, and I thought Big Boss was the older version. But no, they're two completely separate people. And it's like, oh, spoilers for Metal Gear. I think spoilers for the whole entire series, honestly, because I've looked up things over the years and I've heard things over the years. I don't know if they're true, and don't tell me if they're true. I don't want to know. I'm just kind of spitballing here. So at first I thought Big Boss and Solid Snake were the same people, but no, they're two different people, which was very surprising. And then I remember a few years back, I was still so confused about this, so I looked it up. And apparently Snake is a clone of Big Boss? Maybe? Are they brothers? I think he's a clone of Big Boss. And in the first game, Big Boss, like, betrays Snake, and I was like, what? If anything, I would have thought this would have been like Big Boss and Snake working together for the whole entire series, and then sometimes during the Solid Snake games, sometime during the MGS games, Big Boss would reveal that he's betrayed Snake or something like that. But it was kind of like well, I guess spoilers for Resident Evil 1. It's kind of like a Resident Evil Wesker type deal where Wesker betrays you in the first game and he just becomes a villain throughout all the other games. I guess that's... What the fuck was that? Sound like somebody just got shot outside my house. Anyways, but I guess in the Solid games, you must be, because I'm assuming Big Boss comes back. Well, no, he does come back because I see him in the newer titles. Oh, and the reason why I like to start series from the beginning is because I like to become accustomed with the, characters and themes of a series before I go into the later games. And one thing is kind of the presentation of the older games. It's like they were about like 5 or 10 characters that you had to know between each of the games, but there were about like 5 different character models. So it became a point where I was all like, okay, this is Dr. Mauve, this is Dr. this is Dr. whoever. I don't remember who, you all look the same, no racial, but it's all like, which one's the one who betrayed me, which one's the one I'm trying to save, and which one's the one with the daughter? I was getting very confused, and honestly, at this point, I don't know. Maybe before I start the PlayStation 1 game, before I start playing Solid, like, hopefully there's somebody who's talking about the original game so I can get more of a concise understanding of what was happening in the games. Because honestly, I'm gonna be honest, at this point, the only person that I know, that I understand, is Holly, Snake, Big Boss, Gray Fox, and that's about it. Which is so cool, thinking about it. Because again, I'm not saying they should remake they should remake the second game, but I think the second game was such an interesting story if it was presented in any other console beside the MSX. I mean, they did a good job for what the hardware that they were given, but I think the whole story between of course Natasha, the story between Natasha, Gray Fox, Solid Snake, and Big Boss, that was such a cool dynamic. I mean, just Snake going around with Natasha, saving her, the twist with one of the doctors, then learning about Natasha's past with her lover Frank, and then finding out that Frank is Gray Fox, the guy that fucking used to be on your team but then betrayed you in the first game, and then freaking, like, you learn about Gray Fox's past with Big Boss. He saved him and all this shit, and then Big Boss is all like, nigga, I made this shit up because I need to be on the fucking battlefield. War, it's in my veins. I need it. Killer, blooder, murder. Ha! It's all like, bro, that was so cool. Like, if they made, I'm not saying they should make a Metal Gear movie, but I think the story, for what it was worth, the culmination of those two games together was really interesting. Also, that Kojima man, he's a weird man, you know. I was just all like, what's up with him? And I know listen, this is going to sound so strange for people who don't know Metal Gear. I mean, I don't know Metal Gear. I've just seen things over the years, man. But one scene, and I assume this is in the game that I'm about to play, there's a scene where he tries to find a woman in a facility, but the only way he figures out who she is by the shape of her ass. Because it's like, because apparently the military or whatever, they only hire male guards. So he's looking at the asses of all the guards, and then he sees somebody with some curvature, and he's like, oh, this must be her. And then he tracks down some woman, and that happens in the second game as well. I'm like, what's up with Kojima and trying to find soldiers based off the curvature of their body? Oh, is this guy good? And there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing. There's a lot of stuff that I'm forgetting. But he seems like again, for the limitations of the console that he was given, the way that the developer's mind, like his team, because I don't want to just say it's Kojima by himself. I mean, I'm sure he plays a big role in it as he was the game designer, but his whole team as a whole, they are some really extravagant thinkers, especially when it comes to games. I wonder if the Doctor was an allegory for himself. I don't remember which it was Dr. Mauve. Okay, it was Dr. Mauve. I wonder if that was a bit of an allegory for himself, because he's talking about how he loved video games so much, he loved games so much, and he died loving games. He died playing games or something like that. I wonder if Dr. Mauve was kind of a self-insert of his own being. But I was thinking to myself the whole time, I was all like, yo, Konami fucked up. Yo, I was all like, if his team was thinking about this shit during the 1980s, imagine the type of shit that he would have given to a game like Silent Hill. Yo, Konami fucked up, my nigga. Holy shit. But yeah, these were just some thoughts that I've had about Metal Gear. I will try and give the first Solid game. Oh, Metal Gear Solid, the one on the PlayStation 1. The Metal Gear Solid, I'll give that a try and see how I like it. And hopefully I stick with it. I actually have a friend who plays Metal Gear. I will talk to them about that later. I'm currently in a emo state in this month, so I am in my mood where I don't talk to anybody. But yeah, these were just my uncurated thoughts about Metal Gear. Tell me if I'm right, tell me if I'm wrong. Actually, don't tell me, don't spoil anything. I want to learn for myself. It's been Justice. I'll see you a lot later. Peace.